Imagine waking up on a cold morning in a thatch-roofed cottage. Your fingers are stiff, your nose is filled with the scent of smoke and animals, and outside, the world is still cloaked in mist. There are no sinks, no showers, no soap as you know it, and the word clean means something very different than it does today. This is the world of medieval hygiene, a place where water could save you or kill you, where laundry was a public ordeal, and where being clean depended entirely on your place in the world. Let's uncover the untold story of how medieval people bathed, washed their clothes, and survived the stink of history. Forget what you've been told. The Middle Ages were not 1,000 years of filth, fleas, and foul odors. Beneath the soot, behind the thatched walls, people sought cleanliness. In their own way. Some washed their hands in sacred streams. Others soaked in tubs filled with rose petals. Some whispered prayers as they scrubbed shirts with ashes and river stones. But one thing united them all. Water was sacred, dangerous, and never taken for granted. This is the untold story of how medieval people bathed and did their laundry, from the peasants who bathed once a season to the nobles who turned bathing into theater. Prepare for mud, steam, and a few surprises. The sun has barely touched the horizon in the village of Ailham, nestled near the southern hills of medieval England. The birds cry in the distance, and a fog coils along the thatched rooftops. Elfrida, a 36-year-old peasant woman with iron wrists and kind eyes, wakes before her household. Inside her cottage, one room for 5 people. The air smells of damp earth, stale bread, and something faintly sour. She walks past the slumbering forms of her children and husband and steps outside to a low-hanging mist and the earthy scent of manure. The pigs are already stirring. Today is wash day. In medieval times, washing clothes wasn't done weekly. It was a major chore, done every few weeks, weather permitting. Rain would ruin everything. Winter, a nightmare. But today, the gods had granted sunlight. Elfrida rolls up her sleeves, grabs the heavy sack of soiled clothes, and begins the mile-long walk to the stream. Down at the river, a small group of women gather. They carry bundles wrapped in cloth garments, bedding, cloth diapers. There's chatter, but mostly grunts. Laundry day was laborious, social, and wet. Tools of the trade, a flat wooden board for scrubbing, lye made from boiled wood ash, animal fat soap if they could spare it, and, believe it or not, urine. Yes, stale urine. Known as chamber lye, it was collected overnight and used for its ammonia content, powerful for lifting stains and whitening linen. The process was brutal. Soak the linens in river water or a tub of urine. Scrub vigorously with lye and beat them with paddles. Rinse in clean water downstream. Hang on bushes or a communal drying rack. Clothes would stiffen like parchment once dry. Softness was a luxury. Elfrida's hands were red and raw by mid-morning. A neighbor, Matilda, shared a sliver of soap passed down from her sister, who worked in the manor kitchen. They talked of births, marriages, rumors. The laundry site doubled as the village's news station. Back at home, the thought of a full-body bath was almost comical. For peasants like Elfrida, water was a chore, not a pleasure. A bath, real immersion in water, was rare. Maybe once every few months, perhaps for Easter, or after childbirth. Instead, there were dry baths, wiping with damp cloths soaked in vinegar or herbs, foot baths washing only the feet before bed, communal tubs, one heated bucket, reused by the entire family in age order. In Elfrida's home, the youngest child bathed last. in water now cloudy with soap, ash, and dirt. There was no privacy, no shame, just necessity. Soap, homemade, animal fat, ashes, and lye. It stung the eyes and stripped the skin. To ward off lice, rosemary and lavender were rubbed into hair. For fleas, a linen shirt worn under a wool tunic would trap the pests, which were then cracked during the evening delousing ritual. Up the hill, in the fortified manor house, Lord Alric was preparing for his fortnightly bath. Servants hauled dozens of buckets of water, heated over the great hearth and poured into a lined wooden tub in the solar. The water steamed, petals floated on the surface, marigold, rose, mint. Lady Isolde, his wife, bathed only when it was safe. Many believed that bathing opened the body to illness. Doctors warned that warm water made one vulnerable to disease, especially plague. Thus, noble bathing was ceremonial, controlled, tended by servants. After the bath, Isolde would be dusted with finely ground iris root, clothed in linen chemises, and spritzed with imported perfumes, sandalwood, frankincense, musk. Their outer garments, silk, velvet, were rarely washed. They were brushed, aired, perfumed. But the undergarments, fresh daily, and laundry, handled by a team of servants. Noble linens were boiled, bleached in the sun, and even flavored with wine or rosewater. The castle laundry rooms were steam-filled, reeking of soap and sweat. A laundress named Maud, age 20, handled over 40 garments a week. Her reward? Bread, housing, and 2 copper coins. In towns and cities, bathhouses were common until the 14th century. In places like Paris or Prague, public bathhouses had steam rooms, wooden tubs, heated stone floors, male and female hours, though often mixed. They were social spaces. People brought food. Musicians played. Massages were offered. Some bathhouses had more adult offerings. Brothels disguised as bathing salons were not uncommon. Then came the plague. Doctors believed water softened the skin and opened pores, allowing the deadly miasma to seep in. Bathhouses shut down. People stopped bathing entirely. Rich and poor alike rubbed themselves with vinegar or wore perfumed pomanders. Small metal balls filled with herbs. Cleanliness gave way to caution. Monastic life had its own hygiene rules. Many abbeys had lavatoriums, stone basins with fresh water. Monks washed hands before meals and shaved weekly. Some monasteries even had primitive indoor plumbing. The rule of Saint Benedict allowed weekly baths for the ill and instructed regular washing of hands and feet. Some monks even had dedicated bath days. Yet saints like Saint Francis were praised for never bathing, their grime seen as a badge of humility. For nuns, modesty reigned. Bathing was done in private, often in a shift, with hair veiled even while soaking. Water was sacred. Cleanliness of the soul mattered more than the body. Children were wild things, running barefoot, covered in dust, and often riddled with lice. Bathing was rare for them. Instead, their heads were shaved to manage lice. Their clothes were linen when possible, easier to boil. Mothers deloused them daily with combs and fingernails. But children, being children, delighted in water. In summer, they splashed in streams. In winter, they huddled around fires, shivering after a vinegar wipe down. Sickness was common: worms, rashes, coughs. Cleanliness was pursued not for freshness, but to fight disease. After the harvest festival, the manor throws a feast. The next day, 24 tablecloths, dozens of napkins, and stained surcoats need washing. Maud the laundress boils water in huge copper pots. Ash, soapwort, and old urine are poured in. Clothes are pounded with wooden paddles, boiled again, and then hung across castle battlements to dry, giving the castle a strange mix of floral and sour odor. By nightfall, Maud collapses on her straw mattress, hands blistered. The nobles toast beside a fire, never questioning the labor behind their spotless linens. In a town miles away, a young noblewoman named Katrin sneaks into a public bathhouse in disguise. Her maid whispered to her of its warmth, its laughter. She slips into the tub beside strangers, bakers, merchants, even a widow. They do not recognize her. For a moment, she is not a lady. She is just a woman soaking in hot water, laughing. She meets the gaze of a stable hand. They speak. They meet again weeks later. The bathhouse became their secret, a place of love in a time when marriage was a contract, not a choice. By the late Middle Ages, ideas began to shift. Cities began to enforce sanitation laws. Waste disposal systems improved slightly. Street cleaning became more common. Water carriers brought fresh water from fountains to homes. Guilds of barbers offered not just haircuts but tooth pulling and bathing services. Hygiene began to evolve, slowly, unevenly, and often resisted by tradition. The Renaissance and later the Enlightenment would eventually revolutionize cleanliness. But in the Middle Ages, clean was a privilege, not a practice. The Renaissance brought new focus to the body, its beauty, its needs. In Italy, hygiene reemerged. Physicians studied Roman bathing practices. Rich nobles built private baths. Laundry became more sophisticated. Soap trade boomed. In London, soapmakers' guilds formed. In Spain, scented Castile soap became prized across Europe. But for most, life stayed hard. Baths were still rare. Water still hauled. But the seeds of modern hygiene were planted. We live in an age of hot water on demand, scented shampoos, and electric washers. But in the mud of the Middle Ages, people still fought for cleanliness. Not for comfort, but for survival, for dignity, for love. They scrubbed, they soaked, they suffered, and they survived. So how dirty were the Middle Ages, really? It depends. Peasants did wash when they could. Nobles bathed when they wanted. Soap was used. Linen was cherished. And while the smell of manure and sweat was ever present, it was not because people didn't care. The story of medieval hygiene is not just about dirt and water. It's about class, power, survival, and belief. Peasants washed in rivers not by choice, but by necessity. Nobles bathed in rose water, not for hygiene, but to show status. Women scrubbed linen by moonlight, and families gathered in smoky huts, scraping the dust from their skin. Some were clean, many were not, but all lived by the rules of their time. Strange, sacred, and soaked in history, they lived differently. Water was a resource, not a right. Bathing was seasonal, not daily. And cleanliness was often a privilege. But they weren't mindless savages. They developed systems, routines, and beliefs around hygiene, even if they'd seem strange to us today. In a world before showers, cleanliness was an art, a battle, and sometimes a luxury only the rich could afford. Medieval people lived closer to the earth and to dirt than we can imagine. But in the chill of the river, the warmth of the bath, and the sting of soap in their eyes, they found their own kind of cleanliness. Not perfect, not sterile, but human, and sometimes even beautiful. So next time you step into a warm shower, remember, you're living a miracle that took centuries and many, many dirty hands to build. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into medieval life, give us a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Would you survive a month without a shower? Let us know your judgment.